I didn't realize I'd set out 2 mugs until the kettle clicked off and the kitchen went quiet again. 2 mugs side by side on the granite. One clean, one untouched, like she might still come in any second, steady herself on the counter, and ask, careful so I wouldn't feel guilty, whether I'd eaten anything besides coffee. That's what a big house does when you live alone long enough. It echoes habits you never meant to keep. I reached for 1 mug, then stopped. My hand hesitated in midair. Lately, my body does that before my mind catches up, like it remembers something I've trained myself not to. My phone lit up. Chicago area code. I almost let it ring out. Mr. Morrow? A woman said when I answered. Calm voice. Bankcom. This is Lakefront Community Bank. We've processed the final instruction on Margaret Morrow's trust. The words didn't land right away. Final. Instruction. Trust. They didn't belong together. I'm sorry, I said too quickly. Is my mother? She asked us not to contact you until today, the woman continued. There's documentation and an access key waiting for you. It needs to be collected in person. I swallowed. Why today? There was a pause. Not scripted. Because she wrote the date herself. 8 years ago. 8 years. I looked back at the second mug. What kind of key? A safe deposit key, she said. Then softer. There's also a note attached. It says, please don't let him talk himself out of coming. She cleared her throat. Sir, the branch closes at 5. After that, the box is sealed until next week. If you've ever been the kind of man who built his life on control, you know how dangerous a sentence like that is. A deadline, a mirror, and my mother's handwriting, reaching out across 8 quiet years, daring me to delay again. Before the call, I'd caught myself saying out loud, Mom, I'll be late. The words slipped out while I was rinsing a spoon. No one there. That should have told me something. I told myself it was habit, muscle memory, but habit is just truth that hasn't been dealt with. I'm 45 now. I run a property company that started with me fixing broken heaters in drafty rentals and turned into something people call impressive. I live in a quiet neighborhood outside the city, where everyone pretends success protects you from regret. People describe me as disciplined, focused, self-made. Standing in my kitchen, staring at that extra mug, I felt 12 years old and cornered. 8 years ago, the rain came down hard enough to smear the porch light into a blur. I come home wired from a deal that should have felt like a win. Instead, I was tight with it, restless in my own house. My mother stood in the hallway with a dish towel over her shoulder, doing what she always did when she sensed I was off, trying to make the house feel normal. She was already slowing down then. Her back locked if she stood too long. Her knee sometimes buckled on the stairs. She kept her blood pressure pills lined up in a plastic organizer. Like an admission she didn't want to say out loud. She asked if I wanted soup. Not because I needed soup. Because she needed a reason to stay useful. That's something you understand when you're older. I'd had lunch earlier with my business partner, Richard Blake. Sharp suit. Easy smile. He leaned back and said, You're doing great, Danny. Just don't let comfort make you look stuck. He didn't say my mother's name. He didn't have to. The words sat there all afternoon, fermenting. When she said, You look tired, something in me snapped. Not anger, fear. I heard my own voice. Calm, clean, rehearsed. We need space. She blinked. Space. I nodded, already halfway gone. This isn't working. You should find somewhere else. A place with people your age. Somewhere easier. She looked at me for a long second and asked, Are you sure? That was the moment. The one you either step into or spend years circling. I didn't look at her. I said, Yes. She didn't cry. That's the part that still hurts. She rested her hand on the wall like the house tilted, then went to pack. One suitcase, like she'd been preparing. When she came back, she was wearing her old raincoat, the one with the torn lining she never fixed. Her hand trembled as she adjusted the strap, and she tucked it into her pocket so I wouldn't see. Even then, she was protecting my comfort. I didn't walk her out. I told myself she wanted independence. The truth was simpler and uglier. If I stepped into the rain with her, I'd become her son again. And I didn't know how to be that man and still feel in control of my life. After that, things got quieter, cleaner, crueler. Birthday calls, short conversations, checks I sent so I wouldn't feel empty-handed. She didn't cash some of them right away. I told myself she was stubborn. Now I think she was rationing her pride, and maybe her medication, too. The banker's number still glowed on my phone. 5 o'clock. Less than 2 hours. The old instinct rose up like muscle memory. Delay. Control. I could ask them to mail whatever it was. Handle it next week. Keep my story intact. Successful man, messy past neatly filed. Or I could walk into that bank today and let my mother's quiet decision tell me who I'd been. I poured one mug down the sink. Left the other where it was. Grabbed my keys. Halfway down the driveway, my hands shook so badly I couldn't open the car door. That's when it hit me. Whatever was waiting in that box wasn't just paperwork. It was 8 years of silence, condensed into something solid. A mirror I'd been avoiding. And with the clock ticking toward 5, I finally understood what my real choice was. Not whether to go to the bank, but whether I was ready to see myself without excuses. I hit every red light between my driveway and Lakefront Community Bank, and each one felt personal. The numbers on my dashboard kept flipping, 427, for 33, for 38, like they enjoyed watching me run out of time. When I finally pulled into the lot, the open sign was still glowing, but the lobby looked half-closed. Chairs stacked, a vacuum cord stretched across the carpet. If I'd been 5 minutes later, whatever my mother locked away would have gone back into silence for a week. I'm telling you this because men like me don't usually run. We schedule. We delegate. We call it being responsible. That afternoon I ran across the parking lot like a man chasing his own past. Inside, the air smelled like copier toner and lemon cleaner. Behind the counter, the same woman from the phone met me with a practiced calm. Her name tag said Kimberly Vance. Mid-40s, hair pulled back, eyes that had probably seen every kind of panic a bank can collect. "Mr. Morrow," she said softly. "You made it." I tried to sound steady. Did she come in today?" Kimberly's expression shifted just a fraction. "Not today, but she was very specific about the date. And about you." She slid a slim envelope and a small brass key across the counter. "Before we go to the vault, I need your ID. And there's an audio message attached." She requested you hear it first. An audio message. My first instinct was pure reflex. I can listen later. I just want to open the box. Kimberly didn't argue. She simply held my gaze. She said you'll try to negotiate with yourself. You'll call it practical. She wanted you to hear her voice before you touch what she left. There are 2 kinds of pressure. The loud kind, deadlines, meetings, deals. And the quiet kind, a request you know you don't deserve. The second one is heavier. So I nodded. Kimberly led me into a small office and set a tablet on the desk. On the screen was a file labeled in neat handwriting, for Daniel. My finger hovered over play. I could still choose distance. Or I could let my mother step into the room. I pressed it. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, but steady. "Danny," she said, and hearing my childhood name hit me like a hand to the chest. "If you're listening, it means you came. Thank you. I know you don't like being pulled into things. You always wanted to solve them from a distance." A breath. Ordinary sounds in the background. Clock, maybe. "I was getting worse," she continued. "Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. Stairs feel steeper. Hands shake when you pretend they don't. I didn't tell you because you had finally stopped looking scared. You looked proud. And I didn't want that pride to turn into resentment." My jaw clenched. I remembered her hiding that tremble. "I also want you to know," she said. "You didn't ruin my life. You hurt me. But I made a decision. I chose to leave with dignity, because I knew what would happen if I stayed. You would start hating yourself, and then you'd start hating me for making you feel that way." I sat perfectly still. "Danny," she said again, gentler. "I'm proud of you, but I'm prouder of the part of you that still sets out 2 cups without realizing it." That part means you're not finished. The message ended. The room felt too small. I stared at the dark screen, and something in my chest loosened in the worst way. Sitting there, I realized I'd built my fortune around problems I could fix with money. Broken roofs, late tenants, bad plumbing. But there's a kind of problem no invoice touches. The slow shrinking of a parent's world. The way they stop driving at night. The way they read labels twice. The way pride becomes a second heartbeat. When she lived with me, I told myself I was helping. Truth was, I was panicking. Every time she paused on the stairs, I saw my future. Every time she asked the same question twice, I heard a clock. And instead of admitting I was afraid, I started managing her. Like a property. Like a liability. That's a hard sentence to say out loud. It's harder to forgive. Until finally Kimberly stepped back in. "You can have a moment," she said. I asked the question that had been rotting in me for years. Did she seem afraid? Kimberly sat across from me. Careful. No. Tired, yes. Determined. She wore a medical alert bracelet, and she insisted on walking in without help. She didn't want anyone treating her like she was disappearing. A medical alert bracelet. I'd been sending checks like they were bandages. Meanwhile, she'd been living with a piece of metal that admitted I might fall. Kimberly opened the envelope and showed me a single page. "These are her instructions," she said. "Some of what's in the box is for you. Some of it is not. Not for me." That was the first real twist. I'd been bracing for punishment. Instead, I was being told I wasn't the center of it. Kimberly checked her watch. "We can access the box," she said. "But we have 10 minutes before the vault is sealed." 10 minutes. My old self would have grabbed the key and rushed forward. My new, terrified self stayed seated. Here was my choice, plain as day. Open the box and face whatever she planned, or ask one more question and risk running out of time. Control versus truth. "What don't I know?" I asked. Kimberly hesitated. "She told me not to say this unless you asked. She had a fall last winter. She recovered, but..." Kimberly swallowed. She wrote the date anyway. She wanted the decision to stay hers. My stomach turned. A fall. Not a headline. The quiet danger older people live with every day. The kind you don't understand until you picture someone you love on a cold floor, reaching for help. "Where is she now?" I asked. "She listed an address in Aurora," Kimberly said. "A small senior community. She said it was temporary. She didn't want you to show up angry. She wanted you to show up honest." We walked toward the vault. The bank around us was shutting down. Lights dimmer, voices lower. The sound of a lock clicking somewhere behind a door. Kimberly unlocked my mother's box, slid it onto a table, and stepped back. "You have 2 minutes," she said. I stared at the lid. I could open it and learn what she left. Or I could do the thing I'd avoided for 8 years, call the number I still had memorized, and risk hearing nothing. I chose the harder one. I dialed my mother. 1 ring. 2. Then, before the 3rd, a voice answered, not hers. A woman's voice, older, kind, cautious. "Hello?" she said. "This is Willow Creek. Can I help you?" Willow Creek. Not a person. Place. And in that instant, with the vault clock ticking and my mother's box still closed, I understood the shift. I wasn't racing to a bank anymore. I was racing to a door I might have waited too long to knock on. I was standing in a bank vault with my mother's safe deposit box on the table when the phone stole my breath. "Willow Creek Senior Community," a woman said. "How can I help you?" For a second I couldn't speak. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere behind me, a lock clicked. One of those heavy, final sounds that doesn't care about your feelings. Kimberly, the banker, watched my face like she already knew the answer to the question I hadn't asked yet. "This is Daniel Morrow," I said, too loud for the little room. I'm trying to reach Margaret Morrow." A pause, then the woman's voice softened. "Is this her son?" I tightened my grip on the phone. "Yes. We can't transfer calls into resident apartments," she said gently. "But I can take a message. And, sir, visiting hours end at 7. 7. Another deadline. My life had turned into closing doors. I looked at the metal box in front of me, lid still shut, my mother's key cold between my fingers. I had 2 minutes before the vault sealed, 2 hours before Willow Creek shut its front desk, and 8 years of silence sitting between them. "Please," I said. "Is she okay?" The woman exhaled like she'd been holding something back. "She's safe. She had a rough winter. She asked us to screen calls. She doesn't want surprises." Surprises. Like a son showing up late to his own apology. "Tell her I'm coming," I said. "Tell her I'm on my way." When I hung up, my hand was shaking hard enough that the key rang against the box. Kimberly glanced at the clock on the wall. "1 minute," she said. I should have opened the box. I should have grabbed whatever my mother left and stuffed it into my coat like proof I was doing something right. Instead, I stared at the lid and felt a choice split me in half. Truth or control. I could learn what she planned. Here, safely, behind steel doors, or I could go to her first empty-handed and risk hearing the words I'd avoided for years. "Seal it," I told Kimberly. Her eyebrows lifted. "Mr. Morrow, I'm coming back," I said, more to myself than to her. "But I can't open it before I see her." Kimberly didn't argue. She slid the box away, locked it with a click that sounded like judgment, and walked me out while the lobby lights dimmed for closing. By the time I reached my car, my phone was buzzing again. Richard Blake. Of course it was. I should have ignored him. But men like Richard don't stop calling. They wait until you're weak, then they talk like they're helping. "Danny," he said, upbeat as a commercial. "Heard you skipped the investor dinner. Everything all right?" "Not now," I said. A beat. Then his voice dropped into that smooth, concerned register. "Look, I'm not your therapist. I'm your partner. If this is about your mother again, don't." I snapped, and surprised myself with how sharp it sounded. Richard sighed, like I was the unreasonable one. "I'm saying this for you. You're finally positioned for the Chicago Lakeshore deal. You can't have complications. People watch. They judge. They smell mess. Mess." That word hit me like the rain 8 years ago. Because he was right about one thing, people had watched. Not strangers on the street. People in my own house. My mother standing in the hallway with her dish towel. Me talking like a man who'd learned to sound successful even when he was cruel. I remembered the night I told her to leave. The way she asked, "Are you sure?" Like she was offering me a final exit. Richard kept talking. "You did the responsible thing back then. Boundaries. Independence. You can't let guilt derail you now." Guilt. He said it like a weakness. My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I could hear my mother's audio message again. Thin voice, steady breath. Telling me she'd been getting worse in the quiet way. I pictured her on stairs that felt steeper. Hands that trembled when she pretended they didn't. And I pictured Richard, 40-something, healthy, laughing into a phone, calling my mother a complication. Here was my second choice of the day. Protect my business story, or protect what was left of my real one. "I'm not coming to the dinner," I said. Richard's silence sharpened. "Danny, don't be dramatic." "I'm not," I said. "I'm being honest. For once. You're going to drive out to some facility and what, beg?" That word, beg, did something to me. It stripped the polish off my anger and left it plain. "No," I said. "I'm going to show up. That's all." Richard's tone cooled. "If you miss the Lakeshore signing, I'll handle it. And when the board asks why you're distracted, I'll tell them the truth." "The truth?" I laughed once, bitter. "Go ahead. Tell them I'm visiting my 72-year-old mother." He didn't answer, because in his world that was already a confession. I hung up and sat there in the darkening lot, breathing like I'd run a mile. My chest felt tight, not pain, not panic. Something older. Something like regret finally finding a voice. If you're listening to me and you've ever hidden behind work to avoid a hard feeling, you know exactly what that silence costs. The drive to Aurora took less than an hour, but it felt like crossing a border. Glass towers gave way to strip malls and quiet streets. The sky turned the color of dishwater. My headlights caught rain that never quite fell. Willow Creek sat behind a line of bare trees and a neat sign with friendly lettering. Inside, it smelled like soup and hand lotion and the faint sting of antiseptic. A television murmured in the common room. A group of residents played cards under bright lights, moving slowly, laughing at jokes that weren't really jokes. More like comfort. At the front desk, a woman in her late 50s looked up. Silver hair in a bun, reading glasses on a chain. Her badge said Claire Hargrove. "You must be Daniel," she said, quiet enough that it felt like respect. My throat tightened. "You're the one I spoke to?" "I was," she said. "And I'm sorry for the rules. Families sometimes bring storms." I almost told her I'd been the storm. Instead I asked, "Can I see her?" Claire studied me, not unkindly. "Before I answer that, tell me something. Did she invite you? Or did you decide to come because you needed to feel better?" The question landed hard because it was fair. I opened my mouth, ready with a practiced line, and nothing came out. Then I said the only true thing I had. "Both." Claire nodded once, like she'd heard worse. "She's in the infirmary wing tonight. Not an emergency. Just monitoring. Her blood pressure's been unstable since the fall." The fall. Hearing it said out loud made it real. I pictured her on a floor, reaching for help, and my stomach turned. Claire handed me a visitor badge. "She asked not to be surprised," she said. "So I'll go in first. If she says no, you'll respect it." There it was, a boundary that wasn't mine to enforce. I followed her down a hallway lined with framed photos. Residents at picnics, residents holding grandkids, residents smiling like they'd made peace with time. The deeper we walked, the quieter it got. At the door, Claire paused. "Whatever happens," she said, "don't start with explanations. Start with one sentence you can live with." She slipped inside. I stood in the hall with my hands empty, the way you stand at a graveside before the coffin lowers. Helpless, too late, still hoping for a miracle. Claire opened the door again and looked at me. "She's awake," she said. "And she heard your name." My heart rose, then sank at the next words. She said, "Tell him, I'm not ready to be brave for him tonight." I spent the first hour at Willow Creek sitting on a vinyl chair outside the infirmary wing, staring at a vending machine that sold healthy crackers for $3. The hallway smelled like warm soup and rubbing alcohol. Every few minutes a cart squeaked past, slow as Sunday. I kept rehearsing speeches in my head. Apologies, explanations, a whole courtroom of words, but the sentence Claire had given me kept returning like a warning. Don't start with explanations. A lot of men think the hardest part is saying sorry. It isn't. The hardest part is sitting still long enough to mean it. A door opened. Not my mother's door, one farther down. A nurse stepped out with a clipboard and looked at me the way professionals look at storms before they decide whether to step into them. "Daniel Morrow?" she asked. My throat tightened. I nodded. "She's resting," the nurse said. "Her blood pressure's up. Emotional stress doesn't help." Then she added softer, "She heard you came. That matters." Across from me, an older man in a cardigan pushed his wife's wheelchair with the kind of patience you don't learn in business school. He tucked a blanket around her knees, kissed her forehead like it was a promise, then sat and held her hand in silence. No drama, no speeches, just showing up. I watched them and felt something twist in my ribs. Envy, maybe, or shame. I'd built a life where affection came as applause. They made love look like a chair beside someone you refuse to leave. If you've ever waited outside a room where someone you love is tired, you know what happens next. You don't think about the future. You think about the last thing you said. And in my case, the last thing I said 8 years ago was a lie dressed up as responsibility. Claire Hargrove found me there, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee like a peace offering. "Decaf," she said, as if she'd already diagnosed my heart. She sat beside me, not too close, and lowered her voice. She meant what she said. "Claire told me. She isn't ready to be brave for you tonight." "I don't need brave," I said, but it came out wrong, like I was bargaining again. Claire studied my face. "You do," she said gently, "because you're still asking her to carry the hard part." Even now. That landed. Hard. I looked down at my hands. They were clean hands, office hands, hands that signed contracts and shook at charity dinners. 8 years ago, they couldn't even open a car door. Tonight, they were useless again. What happened? I asked. The fall. Claire exhaled. Ice in the parking lot, she said. She pressed her alert button. We got to her quickly. No dramatic injury. Just shaken confidence. She paused. Older people don't fear pain as much as they fear becoming a story someone tells for them. My mother had always hated being a story. Claire reached into a folder and pulled out a sealed envelope. The flap was folded with the kind of care that makes you angry at yourself. She asked me to give you this if you showed up, Claire said. Only if you showed up. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. M for Danny. When he's ready to listen. I didn't open it right away. That's the thing about guilt. Part of you wants proof and part of you can't bear it. My internal choice sat there, plain as day. Tear it open and drown, or keep it sealed and pretend I was still the man who could handle anything later. Claire watched me wrestle with it. You can wait, she said. But she didn't write it for later. So I opened it. Inside was a single page. No long speech. No scolding. Just my mother's voice on paper, simple, precise, the way she used to label boxes in her pantry. Danny, I heard you came. I'm glad. I'm also tired. I don't want you to see me like this tonight, not because I'm ashamed, but because you'll try to fix it. And I don't need fixing. I need truth. 8 years ago you told me to leave. I could have fought. I could have made you the villain. I didn't. I chose to go because I could feel what was growing in you. Fear, anger, pride. Mixed together until you didn't know which one was yours. I am not writing to punish you. I'm writing so you stop punishing yourself in ways that make you hard. I've been getting worse in small steps. The kind nobody applauds you for. I forget words sometimes. I hold the rail longer on stairs. I pretend it's nothing. I made one quiet decision a long time ago. You will understand it when you open the box at the bank. But please, before you look at what I left, look at me as your mother, not as your responsibility. Tomorrow, if your voice is calm, you can come in. If it isn't, come anyway, but don't make me brave for you. Love, Mom. My vision blurred halfway through. Not from tears exactly. More like my eyes finally admitting what my mind had been refusing. I folded the letter once, then again, small, like I could shrink the truth into something manageable. Outside, the common room TV laughed at a sitcom. Someone coughed in a distant room. Life went on with its ordinary cruelty. Claire stood. You can sit with her tomorrow morning, she said. First thing. If she's stable. Tomorrow morning. Another deadline, but a different kind. A chance. When Claire walked away, my phone buzzed. A text from Richard Blake. Board moved signing TO 9 a.m. you in or out. There it was, my old life demanding its place at the table. The deal that would make headlines. The deal that would make me look unstoppable. And in my pocket, my mother's letter, asking for something no board could measure. Calm. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. My chest tightened with that familiar urge to choose the option that made me look strong. Then I thought about my mother on ice, pressing a button, waiting for strangers to come because her son was a boundary. My decision formed quietly. Not dramatic, not heroic, just true. I typed back out. Handle it without me. The reply came fast. Are you serious? I didn't answer. I turned the phone face down and let the silence do what it does best. Tell you who you are when nobody's watching. Near midnight, a nurse returned and nodded toward the door. She's awake, she whispered. 5 minutes. No speeches. My legs felt heavy as I stood. I walked to the doorway and stopped, because I could already hear my own excuses lining up like lawyers. Then I remembered one sentence I could live with. I stepped in, saw my mother in the dim light. Smaller than I remembered, pulse monitor blinking like a patient metronome. And I said, Mom, I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere tonight. Her eyes opened, tired but sharp. She didn't smile. She didn't forgive me on command. She just looked at me for a long time and said, So quietly I almost missed it. Then sit down, Danny, and be still. And for the first time in 8 years, I did. I opened the safe deposit box on a Tuesday morning, and the first thing I felt wasn't curiosity. It was fear, plain physical fear, because once you know the truth, you don't get to keep your old excuses. The bank lobby was quiet at 9 sharp. The kind of quiet you only notice after spending a night listening to a heart monitor beep in a dim room. Kimberly Vance met me at the counter with the same steady face. She didn't ask how my mother was. She didn't offer sympathy. She just said, "You're back." Like she'd been expecting the part of me that finally stops running. I handed over my ID, took the key, and followed her into the vault. If you're watching this and you've ever put off one hard conversation for so long it turned into a whole chapter of your life, you'll understand why my hands shook again. Not like panic. Like my body was trying to tell me, don't open this if you're still trying to be right. Inside the steel room, Kimberly set the box on the table and stepped away. "Take your time," she said, then added, "Your mother asked for that too." I stared at the lid. One last internal choice, small but real. Open it as the man who wanted closure, or open it as a son who was finally willing to be changed. I took a breath and turned the key. The box didn't hold jewelry. No dramatic inheritance. No secret stash that would make a good headline. It held paper, neat stacks, rubber-banded, labeled in my mother's careful handwriting. A slim photo envelope. A worn little notebook. And on top, a legal folder with a yellow sticky note that read, "Read this first. Don't skip." The folder was a trust document. Not complicated, but specific. My mother had created something called the Margaret Morrow Quiet Fund. It wasn't for me. That was the first punch. A portion went to Willow Creek's Resident Assistance Program, helping older people cover medication copays, mobility aids, rides to appointments. Nothing glamorous, just dignity. Another portion went to a scholarship at the community college back home, for students who were working while caring for an aging parent. Under purpose, my mother had written one sentence in her own hand, "So nobody feels alone and ashamed at the same time." I sat down because my knees didn't trust me. Kimberly watched from the doorway, giving me privacy without pretending she wasn't there. I kept reading, and it got worse in the best way. My mother had instructions for me, too. Not money, but responsibility. If I wanted any role in her legacy, I had to show up once a month for a year. Not to sign checks. To sit in on a support circle at Willow Creek. To listen. To be present where people talk about fear without fixing it. That's what her revenge was. Not a punishment. A mirror. She didn't take my wealth. She took my distance. In the photo envelope, there was a picture of her at Willow Creek's garden, kneeling beside a raised bed, so she didn't have to bend too far. Her smile was small, tired, real. In the notebook, pages of names. Residents. Notes like, "Mr. Alvarez won't ask for help unless you offer twice." Janelle misses her dog. Bring photos. Ruth's hands shake when she's embarrassed. Hold the cup for her without making a fuss. My mother had been building a community while I was building an empire. Kimberly cleared her throat softly. "There's one more page," she said. "She asked us to keep it separate." She handed me a sealed letter, the kind of envelope you don't open casually. On the back, she'd written, "After you see me." I'd seen her. I'd sat beside her and been still. So I tore it open. "Danny, if you're reading this, you didn't just come to the bank. You came to me. I won't ask you to make up for 8 years. You can't. Nobody can. But you can decide what kind of man those years will make you. I loved you when you were small and scared. And I love you now, even when you act like a stranger. My quiet decision was to leave before we ruined each other. Not because you were cruel, but because you were afraid. I'm still afraid sometimes too. When the day comes that I can't be strong, I want you to remember, strength isn't money. It's presence. Love, Mom." I folded the letter and pressed it to my palm until it warmed. Then my phone buzzed, Richard again. 3 missed calls. Then a message. "We need you." Boards asking questions. I looked at that screen and felt the old version of myself lean forward, ready to rescue my image. Then I pictured my mother's alert bracelet on her wrist. I pictured her writing dates in her own hand so nobody could steal her choices. I made my decision quiet as hers. I called Richard back. The Lakeshore deal is yours, I said. Buy it, sell it, whatever you want. I'm stepping away. He laughed once, sharp. You're burning your life down for, what? A guilt trip? No, I said. For a truth. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I told him. But it'll be mine. I drove to Willow Creek with the box's contents in a plain folder. Not like treasure, like responsibility. Claire met me at the desk and guided me to my mother's room. She was sitting up, cardigan over her shoulders, hair brushed, stubbornly dignified. The monitor was quieter now. Her eyes found me and she waited, no rescue, no demand. I sat down. I opened it, I said. She nodded like she already knew. It's good, I added, and my voice cracked on the word. For a long moment we just breathed in the same room. Then she said, Did you read the part about showing up? Yes. Will you? I could have promised. Men like me love promises because they sound clean. Instead I answered the only way that mattered. I'm coming next month, I said. And the month after. And I'll sit there and listen, even when it's uncomfortable. My mother's shoulders loosened, almost invisible. That's all I wanted, she said. Not forgiveness. Not a speech. Just you. When I left Willow Creek that afternoon, the air was cold and honest. In the parking lot, an older man struggled to lift a walker into his trunk, pride fighting his hands. I walked over and helped without saying a word. He looked at me, surprised, then nodded once. No gratitude performance, just recognition. On the drive home, I passed my own house, the big one with the echoing kitchen, and kept going. I didn't know where I was headed yet, but I knew what I wasn't doing anymore. Living like love was something you fit in after business hours. And if you're listening to me, maybe that's the only moral that matters. Money can buy you space, can't buy you peace. Peace comes when you stop making the people who love you pay for your fear.